There, coming at you live from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. Now, this is the first time that we're doing a live video, or any standings update for that matter. But if you follow us on Twitter, you're aware I did somewhat injure my elbow, and unfortunately, it's like somewhat. I just don't want to strain it holding the camera. So that's why we're going to do the standings update this way. Plus, then we get some gameplay going on. I have the commentator in the background quiet. It's not too bad. So, anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this. This is going to be, like, the Packers at the Ravens is the Week 15 game I'm looking forward to the most. Hopefully Lamar's going to play in it. That'll make it that much better. That's why I chose this game, in case anyone's wondering. I can't always do the Eagles, you know. It's boring for everyone that's not an Eagles fan. Regardless, this video, like I said, is going to be discussing the standings. So we're going to go in basically like a simpler order. So first things first, we have the AFC East. The Patriots lead the way with a 9-4 record. Buffalo sits behind them at 7-6. The Dolphins are gaining steam, 6-7, and then you have the New York Jets sitting at 3-10. So all things considered, New England is currently, if the playoffs started right this minute today, the Patriots would be the 1 seed. That is insane. You know, we're seeing both Brady and Belichick succeed without one another this year. Clearly, it just took Belichick 1 year to get into it, but it's good to see it to an extent. Obviously, as someone who's not a Patriots fan, I don't want to see it, but Mac Jones, he's the best rookie quarterback this year. It's not even close. So far, you know, through their rookie years. Trevor Lawrence is having problems. We'll get to him in a minute. Zach Wilson, we'll get to him in a minute. But Mac Jones, I mean, they had an ugly game week 13, but it's what it is. You play to the elements, you play to what you're doing. They kept running the ball. Mac Jones completed 2 passes on 3 attempts, and he got the win. First time in my lifetime, that's for sure, that a quarterback threw 3 passes and got the win. You know, a quarterback that started the whole game threw 3 passes and got the win. But Belichick played the game, and that's how it works. That's what you got to do. So I already discussed each week. You know, I discussed both weeks 13 and 14 during the franchise videos for the Eagles. So if you are interested in those, they will be linked in the description below. But regardless, that's why I'm not going to go into too much detail about what has happened. But still, Patriots definitely have a bright future right now. And it's terrifying if you're a fan of another team. Speaking of, the Buffalo Bills have been trending in the wrong direction, and it's very unfortunate. So we mentioned the Bills. They played the Week 13 game against the Patriots, which they lost. And then they had a couple players get hurt in that game. Nothing too serious. So did the Patriots, but nothing too serious. But notably for the Bills, they did lose another close game. This time, the refs were not on their side against the losing, and they came back. So you got to give them credit for that. Good rally. Get yourselves going. Get the troops going. Keep the fans happy. But it's unfortunate if you're a Bills fan right now. Your team's trending in the wrong direction. Josh Allen was seen in a walking boot after the game. That's a red flag right there. Zach Moss, non-factor. Devin Singletary's doing okay. Zach Breida, non-factor. Stephon Diggs, still a very good player. Dawson Knox is starting to step up now, too. So that's good. He's come at the expense of players such as Emmanuel Sanders, who hasn't really done much in a while now. He started off the year hot, but he has cooled off since he had a goose egg in one game. So that's football for you. The defense needs to kind of figure out what's going on, but you can't blame them for getting beat by the Bucs, and then in that run-heavy game against the Patriots. If they just keep running the ball and doing all these different runs, it's going to get you. Next, we have the Dolphins. Now, Tua, right now, is looking like one of the hotter quarterbacks in the league. Granted, he's not the type of quarterback that's going to go and air it out and get 50 touchdowns in a season. He's not the type of quarterback who, like Lamar, is going to run for 20 touchdowns in a season. You know, Tua's like a mix of, ironically, Aaron Rodgers and Tua. He's got middle mobility of the two of them, and middle arm strength of the two of them. So he's not going to be running the ball as much, but he's not going to be throwing the ball as well. It's all over the place. Plus, he's a lefty, so it takes some time for him to develop. Of course, he missed a chunk of his rookie year. Well, he missed the beginning of his the training camps and all that due to something that happened last year, as you all know. So there's that. Other than that, though, the Dolphins, I mean, they're starting to click. Jalen Waddle really is looking like a potential if it weren't for Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle would probably be the offensive rookie of the year. No question. Jamar Chase had such a hot start to the season, though. So those two are going to be battling it out for Offensive Rookie of the Year, my viewpoint. Still, I would love to see Penei Sewell get it, but that's never going to happen. I'm not clueless. So it'll be nice to see what happens with them. Other than that, you know, there are some concerns with the team as a whole, with the Dolphins. I mean, their running game is still suspect, and they're currently ravaged right now by injuries. They only have one active running back, it's Duke Johnson. So not good if you're a Dolphins fan. But the defense is starting to click. That's huge. Mike Gesicki on the offense, I missed him. He's continuing to play hot. But as we know with Gesicki, he's one of those guys who he'll have a great game in, you know, today. He'll go and put up 10 receptions for 132 yards and a touchdown. And then tomorrow he'll have one reception for 7 yards. You know, that's Gesicki. That's how the game plan works. Anyway, New York Jets. So the Jets are in a position where they have a lot of problems too. Zach Wilson has not looked like the guy that we had hoped he could be. And he's a rookie, I get it. He's on a team that we knew there were holes with the Jets. There was no denying that. The Jets had question marks, rookie head coach, very young team, very talented team, very young though. So there were always concerns with the Jets coming into the year. But I do gotta say, Michael Carter was looking good before he got hurt, and notably, Elijah Moore, he was a second-round pick this year. He's up there with the big boys when it comes to the rookie receivers. This receiver class, you know, not even through the rookie season, has been great. We've produced at least 4 very strong players that I can think off the top of my head, the fourth being Devontae Smith, who I didn't mention before, with Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle. And there's still time for other players to step up. There's still a lot of players that are going to be doing better. So you're looking forward to it if you're a Jets fan. The defense, I mean, I'll tell you the truth. The first game I saw with the Jets this year was against the Eagles, Week 13. The defense looked bad, but their offense was clicking in the beginning, so you got to give them credit. They did somewhat start getting going, but they couldn't control Gardner Minshew. So now we're going to go to the AFC West. And the AFC West is currently led by the Kansas City Chiefs, sitting at 9-4. The Chargers sit a game behind them at 8-5. Sit behind them, a game behind them at 6-7. So the Kansas City Chiefs are currently one of the hotter teams in the league. They're on a 6-game winning streak, and they are ready to go. This team, you know, we finally saw another good game from Patrick Mahomes. At least the start of the game, he was red hot. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a good game. He rushed for 2 touchdowns, Week 14. So the Chiefs are starting to get rolling at the right time. This is what they needed. Kels has somewhat taken a step back, but it's not the end of the world. It's not great, but it's not the end of the world. So at least you got that going for you if you are a Kansas City fan. Tyreek Hill is doing what Tyreek Hill does. He's not getting 200-plus yards every game, but he's still up there. He's able to spread the field. So, and Darrell Williams is still staying involved. The defense is still a bit suspect, but right now, the way the offense is playing, it's not the end of the world. Chargers. So, the Chargers are at least on a little bit of a win streak here. They have won their last 2 games, but they have played against somewhat inferior teams, and they didn't kill those teams that they played, but they did beat them by more than a possession, so they're getting the wins that they need to. It's not like they're barely scraping by. The Chargers, though, they still have some concerns. You know, I'm still thinking that Herbert's injury is affecting him. I say this every 2 weeks now, because it's just apparent if you watch him play. And, of course, they didn't have Keenan Allen for Sunday's game due to a certain illness going around, but they did get Mike Williams back. Williams had a solid game, all things considered. And Austin Eckler right now is probably the biggest concern if you are a Chargers fan. He did appear to hurt his ankle at the end of the game. However, it sounds like they're hoping he's going to be able to play for the Week 15 matchup. So, fingers crossed if you're a Chargers fan. And that's pretty much all I can say with the Chargers. Broncos. The Denver Broncos are probably far from my favorite team right now. They are doing okay. You gotta love Madden. You gotta love Madden right now. I have no idea what's going on. I just looked up and I see them pulling in Oakland Raiders. What the heck was that? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just don't even know what that was. I look up, I just see them kicking the football. We played soccer, we played football. I'm sorry, that's Madden for you. You know, that's just... Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to... I'm gonna have to watch this after the fact and watch that play in particular. That's just, oh my gosh. Sorry I got off track there. I had to point that out. That was just crazy. Anyways. Anyways. So, sorry, back to the Broncos. The Broncos, you know, Teddy Bridgewater, to me, he's not the quarterback of the future. But it's not like you can tell me Drew Lock is. Drew Lock has never impressed in his 2 years. Well, his year and a quarter that he was the starter for Denver. He hasn't impressed enough. He's been okay, but he hasn't impressed enough. I love what Melvin Gordon's been doing recently, but now he's dealing with an injury. The receiving core, there's just so many mouths to feed. Bridgewater's not able to do it. Cortland Sutton's become essentially like a non-factor, which is very concerning to me. Noah Fant's become a bit of a non-factor right now. He's not playing as good as he was before. So, there's still some concerns if you are a Broncos fan. But, I mean, you're kind of embracing for the rebuild after you trade away Von Miller. Los Angeles Raiders are definitely trending in the wrong direction, but they're always playing over their head. We always kind of knew this. Especially with everything that's gone on, though, the fact that they're 6-7, only a half game behind 500, or a game behind 500, I guess you could say, is impressive. I gotta give them credit. Give credit where credit is due. The Raiders, you've went through so much this year. You've had to give up on both of your 2020 first-round picks due to off-the-field concerns. You had to fire your head coach due to off-the-field concerns. So the fact that you're still hanging around 500 is very impressive. Kenyon Drake, of course, done for the year. That's another injury. Josh Jacobs didn't really step up last week. They're hoping he can, but we'll have to see. Time will tell with the Raiders. There's still concerns. In the defense, I kind of would love to see this current defense with Khalil Mack. And if they had picked someone other than Khalil Ferrell in the first round in 2019, but that's just me, you know. I'm just a fan here. AFC North. So this is another close division. Currently, the Ravens lead it with an 8-5 record, and then the Browns and the Bengals are both tied at 7-6, and then you get the Steelers sitting at 6-1. So the Ravens, run-happy team. Of course, let me address the red herring in the room, Lamar Jackson's health. So Lamar got hurt early in the game, week 14, and he ended up getting helped off the field via cart, I believe it was. So that is not good. You need Lamar Jackson if you are the Ravens. If Lamar even misses one game, and it would be against the Packers, that's brutal. But at the same time, you know, two potential Super Bowl teams, if you're not displaying your weapon of choice in the regular season matchup, it does work in your favor. Anyways, the run game, I mean, Devontae Freeman is not the lead back that he was back in 2016, but he's still at least serviceable enough that the Ravens can enjoy him, see what he does. Receiving-wise, I mean, Mark Andrews is Mark Andrews. He's a great player, but he has Lamar throwing him the ball. So, yep, defensively, the team is somewhat coming back together on defense, but there's still concerns. I still think there's some massive holes that they need to address. Browns, so Cleveland, I'm not going to say too much about Cleveland because there's a certain illness that has just destroyed them today. They've lost Jarvis Landry to it. He's on the reserve list now, and there's a few other players that they put on that list as well. Baker Mayfield may be going on it. But with that aside, the Browns have been doing a little better recently. They still need to figure out what's going on. They still need to fix their problems because the Browns were a win away from the AFC Championship. So they were close enough to get into the AFC Championship, no less. So it would have been nice, but there are still questions floating around about Baker right now. Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, this team's on a 2-game losing streak right now. So it is what it is with them. But I'm kind of curious with the Bengals. You know, this is a team that I had as an afterthought. I had them as the 4th place team, not even close. I just, you know, looking at the Bengals, I'm like, all right, they're not going to do anything this year. The team is in a rebuild still. They should have drafted Penei Sewell. And Jamar Chase has proven me wrong and then some. Joe Burrow has stepped up. A lot of people were afraid of a sophomore slump for him, especially since he got to the side. And Jamar Chase, like I said, weapon of choice. T. Higgins has been producing. Boyd has become the wide receiver 3 in that offense, but still, he's there. The defense has cooled off a little bit, but they're still doing good. So the Bengals have a chance. I'm not going to say they're going to make a run, but they have a chance. Pittsburgh sits in last in this division. That tie to Detroit is just so ugly. You realistically could probably have yourself sitting in maybe 2nd place in the division. But we'll have to see what happens with that. I'm hearing myself okay through the audio, so I'm not too concerned about that notice. But anyways, other than that, the Steelers, they do have some concerns. They definitely have some concerns. I mean, Roethlisberger, is he really the quarterback of the future? Is he really the quarterback for this year? I don't think so. I think they should try to potentially get rid of him, give Rudolph a shot, but I don't think they're going to do that. The running game, Najee Harris has been great. Passing game, they definitely missed Juju to an extent. Claypool was a knucklehead. I discussed that yesterday's video. I'm not going to go into it today. But Pat Freiermuth, I love what he does. He looks like he can be a tight end, like a top-tier tight end in the league for maybe a decade, if you're lucky. Defensively, I mean, you got probable NFL Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt. He should be back-to-back, but they snubbed him last year, in my opinion. Aaron Donald, I'm sorry, bud. You didn't deserve it over TJ Watt. Watt did better in like every category. Still, TJ Watt is out there to prove something. Unfortunately, he is dealing with an injury, but AFC South. So Tennessee currently leads the division, still leads the division, I should say, with a 9-4 record. The Colts are gaining on them at 7-6, and then you got the pitiful Jags and Texans at 2-11 apiece. So the Titans, I mean, this running game is so hard to predict. You have Hilliard, who completely laid a goose egg, but then you got Foreman, who had another solid game. It looks like Foreman's going to be the lead back in Tennessee. So it sounds like they're hoping to have Derrick Henry back week 18 now. They've just been completely floating that date around. Now it sounds like they're circling week 18, assuming they don't have their seed locked in place. Even if they do, they might put him out there, just get him some experience, get his feet under him. But we'll have to see what happens with that. Derrick Henry coming back will be huge for the team. Obviously, Julio came back, not the player. He was still not 100%, but at least you got one of your key players back on offense. Still waiting for A.J. Brown to come back. So, Indianapolis, Carson Wentz is doing what Carson Wentz does. He's not 2017 Wentz, but he's not 2016 Wentz. He's somewhere in between. He's doing good, but what the team is being carried by is Jonathan Taylor, far and away the best running back right now in football. Of course, CMC and Derrick Henry both missing chunks of the year, so there's that you got going for you. Jonathan Taylor, though, has stepped up and taken that mantle. He's holding on to it for dear life. The receiving game has so many different mouths to feed, so I don't know what's going to happen there. You still have Zach Pascal, you still have T.Y. Hilton, but how much longer are those two guys going to be relevant for? Defensively, the team is starting to gel. Texans and Jaguars, I really don't have much to say about the Texans. I mean, Houston's in a position where they kind of... You gotta love Madden. You gotta love Madden. Anyways, the Texans are in this position where they're kind of meh. I mean, they need a quarterback. Davis Mills is not the answer at quarterback. I don't know why they're still... the whole situation with Deshaun Watson, I'm not going to get into that, but there's still really some questions with that situation. So, Davis Mills, though, I don't think he's the answer. Tyrod Taylor, clearly not the answer. It makes sense to give Mills the spots, give him a couple starts here. I mean, there's no running game to think of. There's no receiving game to speak of. There's no tight ends to, think about. Offensive line, other than Laramie Tunsil, bleh. Defense, garbage. Come on. Jaguars, I mean, what I got to say about the Jaguars is pretty simple. I think Urban Meyer should be fired after this year. I just, all this stuff's coming out right now about the locker room culture in Jacksonville. You can't do that garbage. You can't, you're bringing a guy, a college coach, and a college quarterback. It's just he's bringing a college system with him to the NFL. This is the type of thing that happened with Chip Kelly, but Kelly at least had one successful year. A lot of times, college coaches just don't transfer in the NFL. Look at Nick Saban, too. Chip Kelly is one of the few quote-unquote successes because he at least made a playoff run. And he was close to getting a second one, too. Just missed out. They missed out due to a tiebreaker. But it is what it is, Urban Meyer, I'm sorry, man. You got to go. I don't think you can be the head coach anymore. It's just there's so many question marks. And now you got this whole thing where basically they're saying now there's like fighting. He's bashing assistant coaches in front of the other coaches and players. You can't do that stuff and expect to be a head coach. Anyways, that'll be a video after the season, I'm sure. I'll do that. So now we go to the NFC. We're going to start with the NFC East. Dallas leads this division by 3 games with a 9-4 record. Everyone else is below 500. Washington and Philly tied at 6-7. New York sits at 4-9. So the Dallas Cowboys are starting to play well again. You know, they're one of those weird teams that get a little streaky. Now, they do have some injury concerns, but let's start with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, I just don't know with this guy. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he's a bit frustrating to have for fantasy in particular, because you'll watch him play and he does good, but he's not getting the passing touchdowns because they're relying on the running game, which makes sense given their offense. But and they're, you know, if you're Madden, and if you're talking about the Cowboys too, you got to talk about their defense. So their defense has just been amazing, amazing, amazing. Arguably the best defense in the league right now. They're hot, they're getting touchdowns, they're getting interceptions, they're forcing fumbles, they're getting sacks. They're doing everything they could, everything they can, and it's terrifying as an NFC East fan. Now, I mentioned injury concerns. Their running back room right now, Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard both dealing with injuries. Pollard, of course, missed week 14. Elliott was allegedly going to potentially be rested week 14, but then Pollard got hurt. So there are definitely concerns there if you are a Cowboys fan, but at least the receivers are starting to step up as well. Washington's getting hurt by a certain illness that the Browns are affected by right now. They just had I'm looking at his last name. Jonathan Sutton, the defensive lineman. I'll think of his name. Jonathan Allen. He got put on the list, so he's out for some time now. Other than him, you know, of course, Chase Young's still done for the year. This is a pivotal matchup against the Eagles that they have coming on week 15, so they kind of need to be healthy. Of course, we also have Taylor Heineke dealing with an injury, so it's not good if you're a Washington football team fan. That's for sure. Running game, I mean, Antonio Gibson's been a bit of a letdown this year. It's unfortunate, but that's where we're at. It's just how he's playing. Nothing too bad. Could be better, could be worse. McKissick's at least doing solid as backup, and Terry McLaurin consistently underrated. Philadelphia, so I always say I don't want to say too much about Philadelphia and then end up going on a rant about Philadelphia. So let's just put it at this. Offensive line is good, still a strength, arguably one of the best offensive lines in football. Jalen Hurts, not going to get into my rant about him. I'm just going to avoid the quarterback situation, tell you that. For the running back room, I mean, you got some solid running backs on the team. You do have a few of them. You know, Miles Sanders, though, I don't know if he's a good de facto running back one, but he just doesn't seem to stay healthy. Receiving room, Devontae Smith would be in the discussion for Offensive Rookie of the Year, were it not for a bunch of other receivers in the AFC. So, good for him. Smith's also at the point where they're kind of using other players. They're kind of spreading him around. They're using his speed to go down the field and do all that good stuff. But we'll have to see what happens with the Eagles. Defensively, definitely some question marks there. There are some pieces that I like. Lastly, we have the New York Giants. The Giants have just been ravaged by injury this year. I mean, Daniel Jones is missing time for the second time this year. It's not good if you're a Giants fan. The receiving core literally reminds me of the Eagles receiving core of the past few years, where it's a bunch of Band-Aid players that you throw together and hope that maybe someone does something because everyone else is hurt. And, you know, your first-round pick, Kadarius Toney, he's literally had like 3 or 4 different injuries that have caused him to miss games, and he's currently on a certain reserve list as well now. So it's the whole team's spiraling in the wrong direction. Saquon Barkley clearly isn't 100%, or if he is 100%, the team is terrified to use him. So if I'm a Giants fan, I'm not exactly excited, but I think at this point you might have to look at moving on from Daniel Jones. But given the incoming quarterback class, I don't really think you can afford to. There's not a lot there. So now we go to the NFC West. Arizona currently leads this division with a 10-3 record. The Rams snuck up on them yesterday with a 9-4 record. Then you got the 49ers sitting at 7-6. Seattle 5-8. So I did not get to discuss the Monday night game. Obviously, I did my live stream before the Monday night game happened. So let me just get it out of the way here. Arizona v. LA, that was a very good game until the very end. I mean, we got to see that onside kick get performed perfectly, executed perfectly. I do wish they had gone for the field goal earlier rather than go for it on 4th down. Maybe then you would have been in the position where you could have tried to burn more time, or kill the clock quicker and you could. It was a messy situation for the Cardinals. Kinsberg got outcoached by McVay, so you got to say that. Anyway, this is on the Cardinals side. So the Cardinals, I mean, they're still the best record in the NFC West. They're tied for the best record in the league at 10-3. Strong, they're ready to go. What's interesting with them, and I saw this graphic, and I'm looking at it now too. The Cardinals are actually undefeated, 7-0 on the road, and they're 3-3 at home. It's one of those weird things. They get outscored at home. It's just strange. And obviously, you want home field advantage for the playoffs, but do you? Kyler Murray is back. DeAndre Hopkins is back. Unfortunately, he looked a little shaken up towards the end of the game yesterday, but you know, there's still a lot of question marks. Christian Kirk is stepping up as a strong wide receiver too as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to what the Cardinals can bring to the table this year. Defensively, they still have some pieces, but if we want to talk about defense, let's talk about the LA Rams. Big time players stepped up yesterday. Von Miller was there to make some plays. Aaron Donald in particular, I think he had 3 sacks yesterday. You know, the defense stepped up, and this was despite losing Jalen Ramsey to a certain reserve list. They've lost a couple other players, including Odell Beckham Jr. to said list today. So, not good if you are a Rams fan, but your team did pull off a huge primetime victory when you needed to. You are in a losing streak. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, I started with defense for once. Matthew Stafford did step up. You know, there was a lot of speculation that Stafford was playing through an injury. It wouldn't have shocked me, but now Darrell Henderson's out. He didn't officially miss Week 13, but they didn't play him at all. And then he didn't play in Week 14. He was out Week 14 due to a certain reserve list, and he was still dealing with the injury. So it's just a little insane if you are a Rams fan. Your team is sort of being attacked by that. Other than that, the receiving core, I mean, Cooper Kupp, far and away, best player right now in the league. Thumbnail of this video. Been holding on to Cooper Kupp for a while now, and he's finally going to get it after the performance he had yesterday. So, give credit where credit is due, and Van Jefferson has stepped up since Robert Woods has gone down. Next, we have the 49ers. So, the 49ers are decent. They're not like an elite team right now. They're good, but they're not. I'm not writing home and saying, oh my gosh, I think that this team is the best team in the NFL, far and away. They're good, but they're not great. I like what the 49ers offer, but I don't think Garoppolo's the answer. I think Jimmy G has to go now. You gave up a second rounder for him. I get it. You want to keep holding on to him. You gave him that big contract, but it is what it is. You know, sometimes you gotta cut your losses, put Trey Lance out there, see what happens. Defensive side, or continuing on the offensive side of the ball, the running back room, injury, time and time again. So, receiving room, there's so many mouths to feed on that offense. I mean, now Brandon Ayuk, he started off the year looking horrible. Now he's starting to click again. We'll have to see what happens. Defensively, 49ers are not the 49ers of 2019, but they're at least still good. Nick Bosa getting to the quarterback. Other players are getting to the quarterback. They're doing solid in the linebacking core. Of course, that's what's going to happen when you have Fred Warner. But there's just so many other question marks on this team. I don't think they're built to make a playoff run. Seattle, oh my gosh. You know, the Seahawks are actually decent. They do have more points scored than they have allowed, and that's despite missing Russell Wilson for a few games. But this team is overplaying, if you ask me. Like, the secondary is, if it isn't the worst in football, it's one of the worst, like bottom 3, bottom 5. But to me, it might very well be the worst. I'd have to pull up the numbers to tell you that for a fact. It's atrocious. You're easily able to torch that secondary. And speaking of torching, you know, on the offensive side of the ball, DK Metcalf has not done anything. Tyler Lockett has really stepped up. He went from being that, he'll give you 4 good games in the year and then 12 okay, to maybe he's a consistent playmaker for like 11, 12 games in the year. DK Metcalf, however, has been negated to the role of like Tyler Lockett, I guess you could say. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Running game, of course, this team does miss Chris Carson. They did sign Adrian Peterson, but he got hurt after a single game. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Future Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson. I'd love to see him continue to have one more healthy season. Next, we have the NFC North. Green Bay, I'm not going to say they've won this division yet, but if they win once or Minnesota loses once, they win the division. So they're sitting at 10-3. Minnesota sits at 6-7 behind them. Chicago 4-9, and then you get the Detroit Lions at 1-11-1. So Green Bay, I mean, if you're watching the sim while I'm talking here, you can see how they're succeeding. Aaron Rodgers constantly throwing the ball to players like Devontae Adams. We have seen other players step up recently as well, but Rodgers, I mean, he's in the midst of what could potentially be an MVP season. I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's a big crowd for other players right now. Rodgers doesn't really have the cult following that he used to. He has a lot of fans, but he doesn't have as many fans as he used to have after a certain, I'm not going to say scandal that came out with him, but a certain scandal that came around with him. So we'll see what happens with that. But Aaron Jones is continuing to be one of the better running backs in the game as well. The offensive line still isn't up to par. Rodgers is probably taking too many hits. He's still dealing with that toe injury. But defensively, I mean, if they had prime Clay Matthews, this team would be lethal. That's all I'm going to say. Minnesota has been a letdown. Now, their secondary is surprisingly among the worst. I think Mike Zimmer is as good as gone if they don't make the playoffs this year. Or if they don't rebound. I think if they don't go 9-8, he's gone. So they got to win 3 of their last 4 in my view. But Zimmer, I mean, he's had too long. He's continuously failed the team, excluding a NFC Championship appearance in 2017. But that's the past. I mean, you already saw Doug Peterson, who was the other. You already saw 2 of the coaches that made it to the championship games in 2017 get fired. So what's stopping Zimmer from getting fired? And of course, the 4th is the immortal Bill Belichick. But that's where you're at if you're the Vikings. Offensively, Justin Jefferson is continuing to play very strong football. That is huge if you are a Vikings fan. That is the exact news you wanted to hear. You did not want to see him regress. He put the sophomore slump in the rearview mirror. Kirk Cousins on the flip side, I mean, he's as good as gone if you ask me. They can't keep him as the starting quarterback anymore. You got to get another quarterback. Obviously, you're not going to get Rodgers, but I can't imagine Green Bay if first you get Brett Favre, who played for the team for almost 20 years, leaving them and going to Minnesota, and then following that, you have Aaron Rodgers do the same thing. I can't see it. I can't see that happening. Green Bay would flip. But, I mean, he'd be a good fit there. I mean, just imagine him throwing to Justin Jefferson every play. And you can't even forget Adam Thielen, who is currently dealing with an injury. But it's just, oh, man. The Vikings do have some concerns, specifically on defense right now. Chicago, they were hanging in there with the Packers this past week until they weren't. So for a half, they were hanging in there. I like what the Bears can offer. Some people are really down on Justin Fields right now. And I didn't like him coming out of college just because he went to Ohio State. And I'm not an Ohio State fan. I don't care for Ohio State. So I do kind of knock their players a little bit. But there are people who are calling him Bustin Fields instead of Justin Fields just because he's a bust. You can't call a guy a bust who started the year as the backup quarterback and has been dealing with injuries. And you look at his receiving core. How can you call him a bust? He is a rookie still. Give him at least 2 more years before you dare to call him a bust. That's my viewpoint. He was a first-round pick for a reason. He's a very strong player. You cannot go after him. Once he's healthy, once he gets an offseason under his belt, he'll be a good player. Mark my words. Will he be an elite Lamar Jackson player? No. But he's going to be a good player regardless. Anyways, they still have a strong team. Of course, you got Singleton as your lead back. He's healthy. He hasn't been producing all that much lately, so that is a little concerning. Receiving-wise, Darnell Mooney really stepping up at the right time. That's what you want to see if you are a fan of the Bears. However, Allen Robinson has become a very big non-factor. Cole Kmet, though, I do like what he's been bringing to the table. Cole Kmet is one of the better players, in my viewpoint at least right now. He's a very good blocker. He doesn't normally get involved in the offense, but we might end up seeing it more so just because of the way Justin Fields plays, for lack of a better phrase. You know, if he's going to continue playing the way he's playing, they're going to keep getting Cole Kmet involved in the offense. Defensively, I mean, they miss Khalil Mack. You just got to call this season a lost season at this point. So, Detroit, talk about lost seasons. Detroit has the fewest points in the league. They very well might have the most points against, but it's close between them and a couple other teams. So Detroit just stinks. I mean, they got to win against Minnesota. That's huge. That very well might have been the final loss of the Mike Zimmer era, the final nail in the coffin, for lack of a better phrase. But Detroit, I mean, Dan Campbell, I don't think you can get rid of him after 1 year. The team he has is garbage. No offense to the players on the team. Hawkinson and Swift are both dealing with injuries right now. And there's just so many question marks with this team. Jared Goff is not the answer. Right now, Detroit's literally just taking the draft picks to pay for Los Angeles' mistake of a contract. I'm sure they missed Stafford, but Jared Goff did have a good performance week 13. Regardless, I mean, there's just so many questions on that team. Penei Sewell, though. Love Penei Sewell. If I was a Lions fan, I can tell you right now, I'd be getting a Penei Sewell jersey. I think he has the potential to be a franchise tackle for 10 plus years. But what do I know? Again, I'm a fan. I'm not an offensive line coach. If I was, I'd be happy. But anyways, defense, atrocious. What's next? We have the NFC South. Lastly, we have the NFC South, I should say. So Tampa Bay, currently in a three-way tie for the best record in the league with a 10-3 record. And then you got Atlanta and New Orleans sitting at 6-7. And lastly, you have Carolina sitting at 5-8. So Tampa Bay is one win away, or a combined Atlanta and New Orleans losses. I don't know tiebreakers. I don't know who owns the head-to-heads over those guys. So we'll have to see. But regardless, I think Tampa Bay is all but going to win this division. Very strong team. Of course, you got Tom Brady, the immortal Tom Brady. He never looks old. Gronkowski's having an amazing year this year. He didn't have a great Week 14 performance, but he'd been on fire for the past 3 or 4 weeks before that. So if you are a fan of this team, there's just so many players. Leonard Fournette is a lead back. He looks like the player that he was in Jacksonville in 2016, 2017, not the player that he was after. Regardless, this passing game, if you still had Antonio Brown, we're not going to get into him right now. That's a whole different video idea type of thing. What the heck happened with him? Regardless, you got Godwin, you got Evans. There's just so many options here. When Scotty Miller isn't inactive because you have so many other options, you have a good offense. That's all I'm going to say. And the defense is starting to get healthy again in the secondary. Sherman's back, so that's good. Not good for the rest of the league, but good for Tampa. Atlanta, so at least your running game's starting to get established. Mike Davis and Cordarrelle Patterson each had respectable games Week 14. However, Mike Davis, the hype is definitely worn off from what we saw beforehand. Cordarrelle Patterson is still a very good receiving back. He's still a very good back in general. Both can coexist, at least in one game scenario. So we'll have to see if they can continue to do that. But the defense is atrocious. They need to figure out what is going on the defensive side of the ball. They need to fix their defense before they can really be contenders. And Kyle Pitts, I do have to mention him. Hopefully he gets better. I mean, he is a rookie. He had a lot of pressure thrown on his shoulders, especially once Ridley opted out for a mental health break. I mean, Russell Gage is not a wide receiver one. So all of a sudden, all the top tier players started covering Pitts, and it's starting to show. New Orleans Saints, I mean, this is Taysom Hill's time. Taysom Hill needs to prove that he is the quarterback of the future. Because if he doesn't have a good game, if he doesn't have a good rest of the season, the team's just going to say, okay, we're just either going to draft a quarterback, trade for a quarterback, or re-sign Jameis Winston once again. And they don't want to do that. He doesn't want them to do that. I mean, he just signed that big, very hybrid contract extension where it's like, oh yeah, if you do X amount of games at quarterback and whatever. But it's going to be fun if you are a Saints fan. I'm liking what Taysom Hill is doing to an extent. I mean, Taysom Hill and Jalen Hurts, I'd be a hypocrite if I say I like Taysom Hill, but I don't like Jalen Hurts. So, I mean, there's a difference though. Hill can at least throw the ball a little bit better, but he also is more careless with the ball. Thus, he has more interceptions, as we saw Thanksgiving game. Week after the Thanksgiving game against the Cowboys. Was it that? Either way. Whatever week they played the Cowboys, it was the week after Thanksgiving. They played them. He had 4 picks. You can't do that and be a quarterback. But he is still running the ball very well. So he is definitely an interesting player to watch. Now that my Taysom Hill talk is over, now that you got Alvin Kamara back, that's a huge plus for this team. They missed him. They needed him back. Unfortunately, Ingram is out now. But, I mean, Alvin Kamara is your lead back. He had an amazing game last week. So that was exactly what they needed him to do. Defense, still some question marks. Lastly, we have the Carolina Panthers. Now, the The Panthers, they're not officially eliminated yet, but they're getting close to being eliminated. They have some real concerns on their whole team. I mean, their coach, Matt Rule, literally said that they don't really have a long-term future for Sam Darnold. You just gave up, I think it was a 2/4 and a second for Darnold. If not 2/4, that was a fourth, a fifth, and a fourth, a sixth, and a second for Darnold. And you're already saying you don't have a future spot for him? That's not good, you know? That's not good at all. You got to pay him the $18 million, I think it was, for his fifth-year option that you picked up. Anyway, Darnold aside, other players on this team, I mean, CMC's done for the year regardless, but there's just so many question marks. At least Chuba Hubbard is doing decent now, but there are still some real question marks with the team outside of just him. Defensively, the team is struggling once more. Stephon Gilmore is starting to show a little bit of problems, but he's still a good corner. If this team still had Luke Kuechly, they'd be in a better position. But, I mean, now DJ Moore is also dealing with an injury. I meant to mention him, too, for the receiving game. But that's where we're at. Anyways, what I'm going to do, we no longer have bye weeks to worry about. So there's that. But, I mean, it's good, but it's bad. So if I had to predict, like, anything for the rest of the year, I don't even know what I'd say. We're in a weird position where it's like, who do you think's going to do good? Who do you think's going to do bad? But still, it's one of those odd scenarios. There's so many different players to worry about, so many different situations to look at. You got to hope players can stay healthy, but we'll have to see. Regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was definitely interesting. We had some very, very Madden-esque moments. I know I talked longer than I normally would have just because I wasn't holding the phone, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you prefer this format to the other format where I'm holding the camera, let me know. If you prefer the other format, I'll go back to it in 2 weeks. Hopefully I'm good to go. But